The emergency lights bathed the council chamber in red. Ambassador stood before the holographic display, watching another world go dark. That made 73 planets in 3 months. 73 worlds that would never answer communications again. "They're getting faster," said Captain from his position near the war table. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes hollow from weeks without proper sleep. "The Devourers took the system in 6 hours. Last month it would have taken them 3 days. Felt her hands shake. She pressed them against the cold metal table to hide it. Around her, the other council members sat in shocked silence. Some were crying. Others just stared at nothing, their hope already dead. The Devourers had come from beyond the rim of known space. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just consumed everything. Planets, ships, space stations, all of it went into their massive machines. What came out was more Devourers, more death. "Our weapons don't work," said Admiral, his scales turning gray with stress. "We hit them with everything. They just adapt. Every weapon we use becomes useless after one battle." "Maybe we should try to talk to them again," suggested Counselor. Her voice was weak, desperate. "Maybe we didn't understand their response." "They don't talk," said flatly. "They consume, that's all they do." The display showed the current war map. Red zones covered most of the galaxy's outer rim. Those were dead zones. Nothing lived there anymore. The yellow zones were under attack. Only a small section of blue remained, the core worlds, where billions of refugees crowded together, waiting for death to arrive. "How long?" asked quietly. Looked at his data pad. "At their current speed, 6 weeks until they reach Valerium Prime, maybe 8 if we're lucky." 8 weeks. Thought about her home, about the gardens that had grown for 1,000 years, about the children who played in the crystal streams. All of it would be gone, fed into machines that cared nothing for beauty or life. "There must be something," she said. "Some weapon we haven't tried, some tactic we haven't considered." "There is one option," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. Dr. Jinnah stepped forward from the shadows. The looked nervous, her fingers twisting together. She carried a data chip, holding it like it might explode. "What option?" demanded Admiral. "Speak clearly." Jinnah swallowed hard. "Section 0, the quarantined species." The chamber went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. "No," said Counselor immediately. "Absolutely not." "You can't be serious," another council member said. "Do you know what you're suggesting?" But was already accessing the classified files, her security clearance opening doors that most people didn't even know existed. Section 0. The Forbidden Archives. Species too dangerous to contact, locked away for the safety of all civilized worlds. Most of Section 0 was empty. A few extinct species. Some that had destroyed themselves before achieving space flight. And then, at the bottom of the list, one entry that makes blood run cold. Species humanity, status quarantined, threat level extreme. "Tell me about them," said to Jinnah. The doctor activated her data chip. Images appeared in the air, a blue and green world, third planet from a yellow star. Humans looked almost normal. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But there was something in their eyes in these old photographs, something that made uncomfortable. 500 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed themselves, Jinnah began. The corporate wars. 3 solar systems turned into battlefields. They used weapons that broke planets, weapons that killed stars. When the coalition found them, they were still fighting, even as their worlds burned. "So they're savages," said. "Exactly why we should never contact them." "But they're also survivors," Jinnah continued. "The coalition gave them a choice, accept quarantine or face extermination. They accepted. They went back to their home system and cut off all contact. That was 5 centuries ago." "What makes you think they can help us?" asked. Jinnah pulled up more files, military reports from the old days before the quarantine. In every simulation the Coalition ran, humanity won wars that should have been impossible. They don't think like us. They don't value the same things. When faced with extinction, they don't seek peace. They seek victory, no matter the cost. That's exactly the problem, Admiral said, his voice hard. They're too violent, too unpredictable. If we let them out, we might be trading one enemy for another. Stared at the images of Earth. Somewhere on that world, or in the space around it, millions of humans lived in isolation. Did they hate the Coalition for imprisoning them? Did they even remember the galaxy beyond their system? "We're dying," said softly. "Every day billions more die. Our weapons don't work. Our tactics fail. In 8 weeks, maybe less, the Devourers will reach this chamber and consume us too." She looked around at the council members. "I don't want to do this. The idea terrifies me. But tell me, what choice do we have? What else is left?" The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that death was better than unleashing humanity. Others said that any chance was better than none. Insults were thrown. Threats were made. 2 council members walked out in protest. Finally, exhausted and out of options, the vote was called. It passed by a single vote. Felt sick as she authorized the message. The ancient communication beacon in the Sol system would receive it if humans still maintained it. The message was simple. "This is the Galactic Coalition. We are under attack. We are dying. We need help. Please respond." She added coordinates, battle data, everything the humans would need to understand the threat. Then she sent it. For a long moment, nothing happened. The beacon confirmed transmission. The message was away, traveling at light speed toward a system that hadn't heard from the outside galaxy in 500 years. "Now what?" asked. "Now we wait," said, "and we pray they've forgotten how to make war." But even as she said it, she knew it was a foolish hope. Species like humanity didn't forget violence. They perfected it. The council chamber emptied slowly. Outside the windows, Valerium Prime glittered in the darkness, beautiful and doomed. Stayed behind, watching the city lights, wondering if she had just saved civilization or ended it. The Devourers were coming, and now maybe so was something worse. She thought about the old Earth saying that Jinnah had mentioned, something humans used to say when faced with impossible choices. Out of the frying pan and into the fire. The red emergency lights kept flashing. Somewhere in the darkness, the Devourers consumed another world. And somewhere else, in a quarantine system, a species that terrified the galaxy might be reading their desperate plea. Closed her eyes and waited for an answer she wasn't sure she wanted to receive. The response came faster than physics should allow. Was in her quarters trying to sleep but failing when her communicator screamed an alert. She rushed to the command center, still wearing her sleep clothes. Was already there, staring at his screens with wide eyes. "That's impossible," he kept saying. "That's completely impossible." "What happened?" demanded. Pointed at the display. "We sent the message 48 hours ago. It should take 2 weeks to reach Sol system, but we just got a response, and it's not coming from Sol." He brought up the sensor readings. A ship had appeared at the edge of the system, not jumped in through normal space, not arrived through any known method. It had just appeared like someone had drawn it into existence. "Where did it come from?" asked. "According to our sensors, nowhere. 1 second the space was empty. The next second there was a ship." Hands shook as he worked his controls. "And it's heading straight toward us. It'll be here in 3 hours." "What kind of ship?" Pulled up the visual scan. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way. Sleek and dark, covered in weapons that the scanners couldn't fully identify. It moved through space like a hunting animal, smooth and confident. "It's broadcasting human identification codes," said quietly. "Old Coalition codes from before the quarantine." The news spread through the Coalition fleet like fire. A human ship was coming. The deadliest species in the galaxy had answered their call. Officers argued about whether to shoot it down before it got close. Others wanted to run. Admiral ordered all ships to battle stations but held fire. Stood in the docking bay 3 hours later, flanked by guards. She wore her formal robes, trying to look calm even though her heart hammered in her chest. Beside her had his hand on his sidearm. The human ship docked perfectly, smooth and professional. The airlock hissed open. The first human through was tall and moved with controlled power. She wore a military uniform, dark blue with silver markings. Her eyes swept the docking bay, cataloging everything in seconds. Behind her came more humans, all moving with the same predatory grace. "I am Admiral," the first human said in perfect coalition standard language. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. "You sent a distress call. We're here to help." Tried to speak but found her voice stuck. Up close, humans looked even more dangerous. They stood too still. Their eyes focused too sharply. Every movement seemed calculated. "I'm Ambassador," she finally managed. "Thank you for coming." Smiled. It should have been comforting, but something about it made survival instincts scream. "You're welcome. Though I have to say, we were surprised to hear from you. It's been a long 500 years. "How did you get here so fast?" asked, his military training overriding his fear. "We just sent the message." "We've made some improvements to our technology," said casually. "The quarantine gave us a lot of time to think, to develop. May we come aboard? We should discuss your situation." The meeting room felt too small with humans in it. Had brought Colonel, her Special Forces commander, and engineer who looked barely old enough to be in space. But when started explaining human technology, his youth became irrelevant. "Your problem is you're fighting the Devourers with your normal tactics," said, pulling up holographic displays. "You're trying to reason with them, predict them, negotiate. That doesn't work with an extinction-level threat." "And you know better?" Admiral asked coldly. "We had 500 years to study your public records from before the quarantine," said. She moved to the tactical display, her augmented eyes glowing slightly in the dim light. "We analyzed every major war in Coalition history. We ran millions of simulations. We know how you fight." Added, "and we know how to fight differently." Presented them with all the data on the Devourers. Battle reports, sensor readings, failed strategies. She expected the humans to need time to analyze it, to run their own simulations. Instead, spent 10 minutes reviewing everything, then looked up. "We can stop them," she said simply. The Coalition officers stared at her. "Just like that," said. "You look at 3 months of data and just decide you can win." "The Devourers are a consumption algorithm," explained, speaking faster as he got excited. "They're predictable. They adapt to your weapons because your weapons follow mathematical patterns. But humans, we don't fight mathematically. We fight creatively, chaotically. We'll show them patterns they can't adapt to because the patterns don't make logical sense." "That sounds like madness," said. "Maybe," agreed. "But madness works when logic fails." Noticed something troubling. In the corner of the meeting room was doing exercises. Not nervous movement but combat drills. Stretches and strikes performed with mechanical precision. When stared, smiled apologetically. "Sorry habit, we train constantly, keeps us sharp." "How much do you train?" asked. 4 hours daily minimum, said. 8 hours weekly in full combat simulation, plus regular enhancement maintenance." "Enhancement." Pulled back her sleeve, showing metal integrated seamlessly with flesh. "Cybernetics, genetic optimization, neural augmentation. Every human in the military is enhanced. Most civilians too. It's been standard for 300 years. Jinnah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "You've changed your entire species." "We needed to," said. "After the corporate wars, we realized our mistake. We were too divided, too weak individually. So we unified, made ourselves stronger, better. We knew someday the galaxy might need us again. We wanted to be ready. She pulled up a star chart. Here's what we propose. Let us handle the devourers at the system. If we fail, you lose nothing you wouldn't lose anyway. If we succeed, you'll know we're capable. You have one ship, said. The devourers have thousands at. We have more than one ship, said, grinning. We just brought the fast one first. Stood, and her officers stood with her. Do we have your permission to engage the enemy? Looked at the other coalition officers. They looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Finally, she nodded. Permission granted, but we're coming with you. We need to see how you fight. Of course, said. Though I should warn you, our methods might be disturbing. We don't fight like you do. The trip took 6 hours, even with human jump technology. Spent the time touring the human ship with Jinnah. Everything was clean, efficient, and slightly wrong. The medical bay had equipment for treating injuries that shouldn't be survivable. The recreational area included a shooting range. The ship's computer spoke to them cheerfully while casually mentioning its 40 weapons systems. Don't you have anything peaceful? Jinnah asked, who was giving them the tour. Music room is on deck 3, said. And we have a garden. Plants help with air recycling. Oh, and the combat simulation theater doubles as a movie room when we're not training. When they reached, more human ships were already waiting. Not 1 or 2. 20 vessels, each bristling with weapons, each moving with that same predatory grace. When did they get here? Demanded. They've been following us, said. Cloaked. We don't like to travel alone in hostile space. The devourers detected them immediately. Thousands of enemy ships turned toward the humans, moving to attack in their characteristic swarm pattern. The human response was instant. 20 ships split into attack formations that made no tactical sense. They flew too close together, then too far apart. Their weapons fired in seemingly random patterns, but every shot hit. Every movement, however chaotic it looked, had purpose. The devourers tried to adapt. Their shields reconfigured to match the energy signatures of human weapons, but the humans switched weapons, then switched again, then fired 3 different types simultaneously. They're confusing the adaptation algorithm, Jinnah breathed, watching her scanner. The devourers can't figure out what pattern to defend against because there is no pattern. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, the devourers were retreating. Actually retreating, something had never seen them do. 20 human ships had beaten a force of thousands. Turn 2, her face calm. We'll need access to your fleet data, troop deployment information, strategic targets. We can have the devourers pushed back within 3 months. 3 months, said faintly. Maybe less if you let us use our newer weapons, the ones we weren't sure you'd approve of. Thought about the implications. Humans had been preparing for this for 500 years, waiting, building, becoming something more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And now they were here to help. She just hoped that, when the devourers were gone, humanity would be willing to go home again. The human fleet grew larger every day. Within 2 weeks, over 300 human vessels had arrived through their impossible jump technology. They set up command centers, coordinated with coalition forces, and began pushing the devourers back system by system. But the victories came with a price that made sick. She stood in the human command center aboard's flagship, watching the tactical display for the sanctuary worlds. 3 planets held 9 billion refugees, mostly children and elderly who couldn't fight. The devourers were closing in from all sides. We can save 1 planet, said, pointing at the display. Maybe 2 if we're lucky and fast. What about the 3rd? Asked. He had been working closely with learning human tactics, though could see it was changing him, making him harder. The 3rd planet becomes the trap, said Commander. The young pilot had flown 30 missions in 2 weeks without a single loss. She pointed at the map with casual efficiency. We evacuate everyone we can to planets 1 and 2. Then we let the devourers take planet 3. Let them, felt horror rise in her throat. There are still a billion people there who can't be evacuated in time. I know, said quietly, and I'm sorry, but if we try to save everyone, we save no one. The Devourers will overwhelm us and take all 3 planets. This way, we sacrifice one to save 2. You're talking about 1 billion lives. I'm talking about saving 8 billion lives, corrected. Her voice remained calm but could see the pain in her eyes. Do you think I want this? Do you think any of us do? But war isn't about choosing between good and evil. It's about choosing between terrible and more terrible. Doctor, the human weapons researcher, stepped forward. He was older than most of the military personnel, with gray in his hair and tired eyes. Ambassador, may I explain something about how humanity thinks? Nodded, too angry and frightened to speak. 500 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves, began. The corporate wars killed billions. We used weapons that cracked planets, burned atmospheres. When it finally ended, we looked at what we'd done and asked ourselves, how did we become monsters? He pulled up images of old Earth and burning. The answer was that we were too divided. Every corporation, every nation, every group made their own decisions. We fought each other while our world died. So when the coalition quarantined us, we made a choice. We unified completely. One government, one military, one purpose, to make sure we never fell apart again. But we also learned something else, continued. We learned that sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to make terrible choices, to sacrifice some to save more. Your coalition doesn't think this way. You debate. You seek consensus. You try to save everyone. And what's wrong with that? Jinnah asked. She had been studying human biology, fascinated and disturbed by what she found. Nothing is wrong with it when you have time, said. She was sharpening a knife, her augmented hands moving with inhuman precision. But in war, hesitation kills. The Devourers don't debate. They consume. If you spend 3 days deciding whether to sacrifice one planet, they'll take all 3 in the meantime. So you're saying we're too soft? Asked. No, said firmly. You're compassionate, that's good. That's how civilization should be. But it's also why you needed us. Because we're the ones who can make the hard choices, the cruel choices, and live with the guilt afterward. The battle for the sanctuary worlds happened exactly as the humans planned. They evacuated 8 billion people in a desperate, chaotic rush. Ships packed beyond capacity, children crying, families separated. And on Planet 3, 1 billion people waited, watching the evacuation ships leave without them. Demanded to know why they couldn't send more ships. Because we need those ships for the trap, explained. Every ship we send to Planet 3 is one less ship in the battle group. The math is cruel but clear. When the last evacuation ship left Planet 3, the Devourers swarmed in, consuming everything. Watched on the monitors, tears streaming down her face. 1 billion lives gone in hours. But then the human trap closed. The Devourers had concentrated their entire fleet to consume Planet 3 quickly. They were grouped together, tightly packed, focused on their feeding. The humans hit them with everything. Weapons didn't understand tore through Devourer ships, quantum bombs that existed in multiple dimensions, missiles that learned and adapted faster than the enemy, and strangest of all, kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed. No electronics to hack, no shields to adapt to, explained cheerfully as he watched his missiles work. Just mass and velocity. Physics doesn't negotiate. The Devourer fleet was destroyed completely. For the first time since the war began, an entire enemy armada was eliminated. 8 billion people were saved. 1 billion died, and didn't know whether to celebrate the victory or mourn the cost. That night she found Private in one of the ship's observation lounges. The young Marine was only 19, enhanced and trained since childhood. She was crying silently, looking out at the stars. "Are you okay?" asked softly. wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine, ma'am, just thinking about Planet 3. You're sad about it?" "Of course I am," said, sounding surprised. "A billion people died, how could I not be sad?" Sat down beside her. "But you still think it was the right choice?" "I think it was the only choice," said. "That doesn't make it right, it just makes it necessary." She looked at with eyes too old for her young face. "Do you know what they teach us in training? They teach us that being a soldier means living with guilt. We make choices that save the most people possible, but we still have to live with knowing who we couldn't save." "How do you bear it?" "We remember them, every person we couldn't save. We carry them with us." Touched a small device on her uniform. "This is a memory chip. It has the names of everyone who died on Planet 3, all 1 billion names. Every human soldier has one. We'll carry them forever." Felt something shift in her understanding. These humans weren't monsters who didn't care. They were people who cared so much that they were willing to become monsters to protect others, and that might be worse in a way. Over the next month, the humans pushed the Devourers back across dozens of systems, but each victory came with its cost. Civilian casualties, destroyed infrastructure, entire ecosystems poisoned by human weapons. Doctor explained their philosophy one evening over what humans called coffee, a bitter drink that was learning to tolerate. "You wanted to know why we're like this," said. "Why we can do these terrible things and still sleep at night." "Can you?" asked. "Sleep, I mean." "Not always," admitted. "But here's what we learned in 500 years of isolation. The universe doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care about morality. When an extinction event comes, you either adapt or die. So we adapted. We made ourselves into the species that could survive anything, that could do anything necessary. Even become as bad as your enemies. If necessary, yes, but the difference is we don't want to. The Devourers consume because that's all they are. We fight because we're protecting something. When the war is over, we go home. We build gardens. We write poetry. We raise children and teach them to be better than we are." Smiled sadly. "You called us because you needed someone who could be monsters, but we're not monsters by choice. We're monsters by necessity, and when the necessity ends, we can be human again." Wanted to believe him. She watched play with rescued alien children, making them laugh. She saw cry when they couldn't save a medical station. She noticed how spent every night reviewing casualty reports, her face showing the weight of every decision. The humans felt their cruelty. They just didn't let it stop them. "The Devourers are retreating toward the dark space they came from," reported one morning. He had changed in these weeks, learned to make harder choices. But there's a problem. Their main structure is there, a massive construction that's been building ships this whole time. Studied the data. We'll need to destroy it completely. How? She pulled up specifications for something called a stellar cascade weapon. The Coalition officers listened in horror as she explained how it would work. The weapon would destabilize stars in 5 systems, creating a chain reaction that would make the entire region uninhabitable for 1,000 years. "The systems are already evacuated," said. "No one will die." "But you'll destroy 5-star systems," said. "Forever." "Yes, and the Devourers will never come back." Admiral stood up. "This is too much, we can't allow this." Looked at him calmly. "How many more billions die while you debate? We didn't ask to make these choices. You called us because you couldn't make them yourselves." The argument lasted for hours. But in the end, with the Devourers preparing for one final push, the Coalition gave permission. The stellar cascade weapon worked perfectly. 5 stars died. An entire region of space became a dead zone, and the Devourer threat ended. The war was won, but as looked at the star charts showing the dead systems, she wondered if the cost of victory had been too high, and whether humanity would ever truly be willing to stop being the monsters the galaxy needed them to be. 3 weeks after the war ended, received a message that made her blood run cold. It came from Admiral, marked urgent and classified. "We need to talk about the human problem." She met him in a secure room deep in the Coalition headquarters. With him were 5 other senior officers, all looking grim. On the table between them lay reports, data files, and surveillance footage. "What is this?" asked. "Evidence," said. "The humans are not going home." He activated a holographic display. It showed human ships throughout Coalition space, mining operations, construction projects, military exercises. "They've been here for 3 months, continued. In that time, their fleet has grown by 40%. They're building shipyards in 7 systems. They're recruiting colonists. Ambassador, they're not acting like visitors. They're acting like conquerors. They're helping with reconstruction," argued, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. "Are they?" Another officer pulled up more data. "Look at what they're building. These aren't civilian structures. They're military installations, weapons platforms. They say it's to defend against future threats, but defend for who? Us or them?" Studied the reports. The humans had been busy, very busy. They'd introduced new technologies, improved shield systems, upgraded weapons. They'd also positioned themselves at key strategic points throughout Coalition space. "There's more," said quietly. "We've detected human exploration ships heading toward the galactic core, into restricted space. When we asked them about it, Admiral said they were surveying for threats, but they didn't ask our permission first. Maybe they don't need permission to protect us. Or maybe they're expanding, testing boundaries, seeing how far they can go before we push back." Leaned forward. "I fought beside them. I respect what they did, but we cannot ignore what they are. They're the most powerful military force in the galaxy, by far, and they're not leaving." Met with that evening. The human admiral looked tired, older somehow. The war had aged all of them. "Is it true?" asked. "Are you expanding into Coalition space?" Sighed, "Yes." "Without asking permission." "Would you have given it?" asked. "Be honest. Would the Coalition have approved human colonies, human military bases, or would you have debated for years while deciding whether to trust us?" "That's not your decision to make." "You're right," said calmly. "But here's our position. We came when you called. We saved your civilization. We lost 30,000 soldiers doing it. And now you're asking us to just go home. Pretend the galaxy beyond Sol system doesn't exist. Wait another 500 years until you need us again." You could have asked. And you could have said no. Then what? We'd be back in quarantine while the next threat builds. "No, we're not doing that again." Pulled up a star chart. "We're not trying to conquer you. We're trying to protect you. But we need to be here, positioned and ready for when the next crisis comes." "And what if we don't want your protection?" "Then you're fools," said bluntly. "You think the Devourers were unique. You think nothing else dangerous exists in this galaxy. We've already detected 3 potential threats in deep space. Things that might become problems in 10 years, 20 years. We're preparing for them." Felt anger and fear mixing in her chest. "You're making decisions for the entire galaxy. Someone has to, you won't." The relationship between humans and the Coalition deteriorated quickly. Some species welcomed the human presence. They felt safer with humanity's military might nearby, but others felt occupied, controlled, threatened. Protests erupted on several worlds. "Humans go home" became a common slogan. There were incidents, human soldiers attacked, human facilities sabotaged. Nothing major yet, but the tension was building. Tried to bridge the gap. He had worked closely with and respected the humans' abilities, but even he was concerned. "They're training our people in human tactics," he told one day, "teaching us to fight like them, think like them. Some of our soldiers are even accepting human enhancements." "Is that bad?" "I don't know. Maybe we need to be more like them to survive. Or maybe we're losing what makes us us." The real crisis came when intelligence officers discovered something in the human database, a document labeled Post-War Integration Protocol. Jinnah brought it to Late one night. The looked shaken. "You need to see this." The protocol outlined humanity's long-term plans. They called it gradual integration. Over the next century, humans would slowly take key positions in coalition government, military, and infrastructure, not through conquest but through competence and necessity. They would make themselves indispensable. "It's a takeover," Jinnah said. "A slow, peaceful takeover. In 100 years, humans will control the coalition without ever firing a shot at us." Confronted immediately, the admiral didn't deny it. "You think we're trying to conquer you," said, "but you're wrong. We're trying to save you from yourselves. By taking over our government. By making sure the galaxy survives the next crisis, and the one after that, and the one after that." Stood and walked to the window looking out at the stars. "You're good people, compassionate, thoughtful, civilized, but you're also slow to act, afraid of hard choices, and dangerously naive about threats. So you'll make our choices for us. If necessary, yes, because the alternative is watching you debate while another extinction event kills billions." "That's tyranny," said. "Maybe, but it's tyranny that keeps you alive." Turned to face her. "You called us monsters. You were right. We are monsters. We became monsters because someone has to be, but we're monsters who care about you, who will protect you, who will make the terrible choices so you don't have to. And we're just supposed to accept that. You already did, when you sent that distress call, when you let us fight your war. You accepted that you needed us. Everything since then has just been you realizing what that means." The debate reached the council. Some wanted to expel humanity by force. Others argued that would just guarantee another war, one they'd certainly lose. A few suggested that maybe humanity's way was better, that the galaxy needed their strength. Private visited during this time. The young Marine had been helping rebuild a school on Valerium Prime, working alongside alien children. "They're scared of us," said sadly. "The children. I try to be gentle, but they see the enhancements, the scars, and they're scared." "Can you blame them?" "No, we are scary. We're weapons that walk and talk," sat down heavily. "But we're also the reason they're alive to be scared. The devourers would have consumed them. We stopped that." "At what cost?" asked. 5 dead star systems, billions dead, and now you're taking over their government." "We're not taking over, we're taking responsibility." Looked at her with those 2 old eyes. "Someone has to. Your coalition is wonderful for maintaining peace, but terrible at winning wars, and the universe keeps sending wars. So we just surrender our freedom." "No, you adapt, work with us, help us be better. We don't want to rule you, we want to protect you, but we'll do it our way because your way doesn't work when extinction comes." Doctor offered another perspective. He had been studying coalition history, comparing it to human development. "You're 5,000 years old as a coalition," he told. "You've had maybe 3 major crises in all that time. You're not used to constant threat. Humans. We've faced extinction 6 times just in the last 1,000 years. Before the corporate wars, we had world wars, nuclear standoffs, climate catastrophes. We evolved in pressure. And that makes you better. It makes us different. You're civilization builders, we're survival specialists. You need both to thrive." The tension came to a head when a coalition patrol tried to stop a human exploration ship from entering restricted space. The humans ignored the order. The coalition ship moved to intercept. For 30 seconds, weapons were armed on both sides. Then personally intervened, ordering the human ship to stand down. The crisis passed, but everyone knew how close they'd come to a new war. That night and met privately, without officials or guards. "This can't continue," said. "We'll tear apart from the inside." "I know," admitted. She looked exhausted. "We saved you from the devourers, but now you need saving from us, or we need saving from ourselves. I'm not sure which. Can you go home, really go home? Can you survive without us? Countered. Be honest. The next threat comes, can you handle it alone? Didn't answer, she didn't know. Here's what I think, said slowly. We need rules, clear boundaries. The coalition decides where we can be and what we can do. We follow those rules, but in return you accept that we're here to stay, that we're part of the galaxy now for better or worse. And if you break the rules, then you were right to fear us, and you'll have to figure out how to stop us, though I hope it doesn't come to that. They worked through the night drafting a framework, human rights and limits, coalition oversight, mutual protection agreements. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As dawn broke over Valerium Prime, looked at the document they'd created. Will this work? She asked. I don't know, said honestly, but it's better than war, and maybe in time we'll learn to trust each other, really trust, not just desperate alliance. And if we don't, smiled sadly, then you'll learn if we're really the monsters you fear or just the monsters you needed. The final vote was scheduled for 3 months after the war ended. Every coalition species sent representatives. The question was simple but profound. Should humanity be integrated into the coalition as full members, or should the quarantine be reinstated? The debate consumed the galaxy. News channels ran constant coverage. Philosophers argued ethics. Military analysts discussed capabilities. Parents worried about their children's future in a galaxy with humans in it. Spent those 3 months traveling to different worlds, listening to perspectives. What she heard was complicated. On Valerium Prime, she met with citizens whose lives had been saved by human intervention. An elderly man told her, I watched my board evacuation ships, human ships. Without them, my family would be dead. How can I fear people who saved my world? But on 4, she encountered different views. A young mother clutched her child and said, they saved us, yes, but now they're everywhere. Their ships, their soldiers, their ways, I feel occupied, not liberated. Had become something of a bridge between the two cultures. He trained extensively with human forces, even accepted minor enhancements that improved his reflexes. He spoke at several public forums. Humans are not monsters, he told one gathering, but they're not saints either. They're people who adapted to constant threat by becoming threats themselves. The question isn't whether they're good or bad, it's whether we can coexist. Someone in the crowd shouted, can we? They'll eventually rule us. Maybe, admitted, or maybe we'll civilize them, change them, make them more like us. Influence goes both ways. Jinnah published a comprehensive study on human biology and culture. Her conclusion was sobering. Humans have militarized their entire species, but they've also retained remarkable capacity for compassion, creativity, and growth. They are living contradictions, warriors who write poetry, soldiers who protect children, killers who mourn their kills. I cannot predict what they will become, only that they are capable of both greatness and terrible destruction. Private became an unexpected symbol of human complexity. She'd continued working with refugee children after the war, teaching them, playing with them, protecting them. When a documentary crew filmed her, the galaxy saw a young woman who could snap steel with her bare hands, gently braiding a child's hair and singing lullabies. We're not just weapons, told the camera. We're people. Yes, we're dangerous, but being dangerous doesn't mean being evil. A knife can kill or it can cut bread. We choose how to use our power. But there were darker moments too. Reports emerged of human mercenaries selling their services to the highest bidder, of human technology appearing on the black market, of enhancement procedures going wrong, creating unstable individuals with superhuman abilities and no control. Admiral led the opposition to integration. He presented evidence meticulously, without malice, simply laying out the risks. In 3 months, humanity has expanded into 50 systems, he told the council. Their population growth rate is 3 times ours. Their technology advances daily. They're training our soldiers in their methods, influencing our governments, reshaping our culture. If we integrate them now, in 50 years they will dominate us, not through war but through simple superiority. Is that wrong? Someone asked. I don't know, admitted. But I know we won't be what we were. The coalition will become something else, something more human. Whether that's good or bad, I cannot say. But we should choose it consciously, not drift into it because we're afraid to say no. Defended humanity's actions, but she also surprised many by acknowledging the concerns. Everything Admiral said is true, she told the council. We are expanding, we are influential, we are changing you, but consider the alternative. Without us, the devourers would have consumed everything, and the universe has more threats. We've already identified anomalies in deep space that concern us. In 10 years, 20 years, something else will come. What will you do then? Call you again, someone asked sarcastically. Maybe, but if you reinstate the quarantine, we might not answer next time. We might decide that protecting people who reject us isn't worth our soldiers' lives. His voice was hard. You can't have it both ways. You can't want us only when it's convenient. Either we're part of this galaxy or we're not. The debate reached its climax when evidence emerged that changed everything. A coalition science vessel discovered that the devourers weren't mindless machines. They were refugees from a dying universe, consuming matter to survive. They had once been organic beings who transformed themselves to escape their collapsing reality. They were running from extinction, Jinnah explained to the horrified council. Everything they did to survive, just like humans after the corporate wars, just like any species would. The implications were staggering. The humans had destroyed an entire refugee population. Yes, those refugees were killing billions, but they were also desperate survivors doing what they thought necessary. Confronted about this, "Did you know?" she demanded. "We suspected," admitted. Doctors' analysis suggested they might be more complex than they appeared, but it didn't matter. Didn't matter, they were refugees. "They were killing you," said flatly. "Their reasons don't change that. If someone is drowning your children, you stop them. You don't debate whether they have good reasons. So you do it again, even knowing what they were." "Yes," met her eyes without flinching. "I'd make the same choice, because the alternative was letting you die. That's what you need to understand about humans. We're willing to be wrong if it means protecting people we care about." The revelation divided the council even further. Some argued it proved humans were too quick to violence, too willing to destroy without understanding. Others argued it proved humans would do whatever necessary to protect allies. The day of the final vote arrived. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from 100 species filled the seats. Outside, billions watched on screens, waiting to learn their future. Was chosen to present the final summary before the vote. She stood before the assembly, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. 3 months ago, we faced extinction, she began. We sent a desperate call to the species we'd feared for 500 years. They answered. They saved us. And now we must decide what that means. She pulled up images, the war, the victories, the costs. Humans are dangerous. This is not debatable. They've made themselves into weapons. They think like warriors. They solve problems with force that we would solve with diplomacy. They make hard choices in seconds that we would debate for months. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. But, continued, they're also people. I've seen Private teach children. I've watched Engineer get excited about peaceful technology. I've observed Admiral lose sleep over every casualty. They're not monsters pretending to be people. They're people who learn to be monsters when necessary. She looked around the chamber. The question before us isn't whether humans are good or bad, it's whether we can coexist, whether we can influence each other, whether we're brave enough to try. Admiral stood to speak for the opposition. If we vote for integration, we accept that humanity will change us, probably dominate us eventually. Are we willing to stop being what we are? Then stood to speak for humanity. If you vote for quarantine, you accept that you're on your own next time. We won't come when you call. We'll stay in Sol's system and watch the galaxy burn if necessary. Are you willing to face the next threat alone? The choice was presented starkly. Integration meant change, risk, and possibly losing their identity. Quarantine meant safety from humans but vulnerability to everything else. The vote took hours, heated arguments, emotional speeches, coalition members wrestling with fear and hope in equal measure. Finally, the results came in. Integration passed, barely, by just 8 votes out of 300. The chamber erupted, some celebrating, others in shock, a few walking out in protest. Found herself outside afterward, needing air. Found her there, looking out at Valerium Prime's recovered gardens. "Do you think we made the right choice?" asked. "Ask me in 500 years," said with a slight smile. "That's about when humanity makes our best and worst decisions." They stood in silence for a moment, then asked, "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to live together, make mistakes, fix them, argue, compromise. Isn't that what civilization is? And when the next threat comes, we face it together, with your wisdom and our strength, with your compassion and our ruthlessness. Maybe we'll balance each other, maybe we'll destroy each other, but at least we'll try." A group of children ran past them, human and alien kids playing together, chasing each other through the gardens. They didn't seem to notice or care about species differences. To them, they were just friends. Was watching over them, ready to protect but letting them play freely. When she saw Anne, she waved. "That's our future," said quietly. "Children who grow up with both our species, they'll be different from us, different from you. Maybe they'll be better. Or maybe they'll be worse," said. "Maybe, but that's the gamble you took when you called us. That's the gamble we took when we answered." Over the following months, integration began in earnest. Humans established official colonies. Coalition species began accepting human enhancements. Cultural exchange programs started. There were problems, of course, conflicts, misunderstandings, fear. But there was also cooperation, friendship, and hope. Led a joint military academy, training soldiers from all species in both coalition diplomacy and human tactics. Jinnah worked on projects that combined coalition ethics with human innovation. Even, who'd opposed integration, grudgingly admitted that the partnership had potential. A year after the vote, received a message from a remote monitoring station. More anomalies detected in deep space. Potential threats forming. She contacted immediately. "We're seeing something building in the outer rim. Could be another crisis." "Send us the data," said calmly. "We'll investigate together this time." Together agreed. She ended the call and looked out at the stars. The galaxy had changed. The coalition had changed. They'd invited monsters in to save them, and now those monsters were family. Dangerous, powerful, unpredictable family. She thought about the devourers, refugees who'd become threats. About humans, warriors who'd become protectors. About how the line between monster and hero was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. The future was uncertain, but then it always had been. The difference now was that they'd face it together, the gentle and the deadly, the compassionate and the ruthless, the civilization builders and the survival specialists. For better or worse, humanity was no longer quarantined. They were part of the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. Outside, human and alien children continued playing in the gardens. Soldiers trained together. Scientists collaborated. Slowly, carefully, fearfully but hopefully, 2 very different peoples were learning to coexist. The story of humanity and the coalition had just begun. Whether it would end in triumph or tragedy, no one could say. But at least they would write that ending together. And somewhere in deep space, New threats were forming. When they came, they would find not a divided galaxy of gentle philosophers, but a unified force of compassion backed by terrible strength. The deadliest species in the galaxy had found a home, and heaven help anything that threatened that home now.